Today we're going to be looking at Your Blues, which is a dark and savage John Lennon song from the Beatles' White Album. Trying to play it on one guitar is a little bit challenging because of course we have multiple guitar parts going on. We have the bass and at least two electric guitar tracks. It is essentially a blues, a 12-bar blues in the key of E, so our chords are E, A, B7, and there's a G passing chord thrown in at one point. I'm going to attempt to show you all of these parts, including most of the solos. We're going to start with the beginning of the song, which is an E chord, but really, mainly what you hear is the bass note, the E bass note. I'm playing the cocked wah position of this Esquire wiring setup with a DiMarzio Area T pickup. It seems to kind of catch the spirit of the song a little bit with that gnarly, nasally cocked wah tone. So you hear that note, then you hear that first signature riff, which is... And this little riff is played probably 100 times in the course of the song. And it's, you know, strummed in different ways. It might be, or it might, however. And all it is you're putting your index finger on the D note, 3rd fret, 2nd string, and you're putting your middle finger on the 4th fret of the 3rd string. Which is, as you can see, one of the oldest blues licks going. We've seen it before from John Fogerty, from virtually every other guitarist we've looked at. And I've talked about how you can look at lead guitar kind of in two ways, as scale tones or notes being parts of chord shapes. This works for both of those things because this is our first position E minor pentatonic scale, and you slide up into that blues box, the second position of the E minor pentatonic, and there's where two of those notes reside. If you want to look at it from a scale tone perspective, it's really part of an E7 chord. Right? Our movable D7 shape, move it up 2 frets, and you've got an E7. You're playing the first string open, so you get the root, you get that gnarly dissonance of the D and the E, the root note, and the 7th of the chord. For the purpose of Your Blues, it goes... Okay, so again, one guy is doing the, and the other guy's doing the bending part. So you're bending that 4th string, 4th string, 5th fret, the G note, up to an A, so whole tone, and then releasing it to the E note, 2nd fret, 4th string. So those two parts really get the feeling of this song. I mean, the bend is this kind of moaning existential angst. And then this is that's the anger that he's feeling, you know? So you got the angry riff and the angsty riff. Angry riff and angsty riff. So the first time, over the E, so... And then the second time, you give that G note a double bend. So again, the first time it's just one bend. slow bend and release. The second time it's a double bend, which I didn't do very well that time. But okay, so those are the first two bars of the E. And then it goes to the A, and you just hear Paul hitting that A note. There really isn't any lead guitar doing anything. That riff is the same. This riff goes to a... So you're bending the same note, you're doing the double bend, kind of a triple bend in a sense. Because you could bend it and just hold it at that A if you're good enough at bending, or you can just slide it up the 2 frets to the A. Because we're over an A chord, obviously, right? Over the E chord, we resolve to the E note at the 2nd fret. Over the A chord, you're going to resolve to the A note at the 7th fret, or on the bend. So again. And the funny thing, it's one of those little quirks in Beatles recording. At one point, I believe it's the 2nd verse, over the A, he still resolves to the E. So listen for that, and you can mix it up if you want. It sounds cool either way. You can resolve, of course, to an E over an A chord, because E is part of an A chord. It's the 5th in the A chord. This is what we have so far. Now, going into the 5, the B chord, is where things get a little interesting. Both guitars, the angry guitar and the angsty guitar, both do this. So the ascending riff on the bass strings is 3-5-7, 5-7-5-7. You can do it sliding or hammering on, however you want to do it. And then the cool little blues lick is... And I've shown you these sliding 6 on the 1st and 3rd strings, and 2nd and 4th strings in several other lessons. You're playing part of a B chord, right? Right, here's your B chord. And we're over the 5, which is a B7. So, first finger, 1st string, 7th fret, middle finger, 3rd string, 8th fret, go down 2 to 5-6. And then those next 3, 4, 3, 2, you're playing your the same fret, 4, 3, 2 on the 1st and 3rd strings. And I've seen people bar those. I think it sounds better playing 1 and 3 only. And you can lean your middle finger, your finger that's on the 3rd string, lean it over to mute that 2nd string. So again. Again, if you want to play all 3, it would be like you're playing a B chord, an A chord, and then a G sharp minor, G minor, F sharp minor. Think of it that way. Again, I don't think it sounds as good as... So that's the turnaround. Bending that. And go down to the B for your B7. So that's the first verse. That's the main verse. Then there's several verses where he does a... And during that, you know, on the Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus one, Keith and Clapton, for the A, they're playing it at the octave. However you want to do it. And then when you get to the it's the same. Okay? Then, feel so suicidal, even hate my rock and roll, wanna die. He goes into this. And that's leading into the solo. Again, pretty rough, but you've got your... That's just standard rock and roll stuff. And then G, E7 to the E. A little bit of a turnaround. And then the solos, the first one's not super interesting. He's kind of going... just really nailing these hammer-ons on the 3rd and 4th strings from the 9th to the 12th fret, and then from the 12th to the 14th fret, and then back to the 12th or 9th to the 12th fret. Not super interesting. However, the second solo is pretty cool. He really... But the solo, he just wails on an E note over the E. He takes the E at the 12th. This is a standard rock and roll, you know, wailing riff. Playing that E note at the 12th fret, 1st string. You've got bending the D note on the 15th fret, 2nd string, up to an E. So you're basically doing this unison. And then when it switches to the A, he takes the G note, 15th fret, 1st string, and bends it up to an A. And releases it to an E when it goes back to an E. So it's very standard stuff. It's not complicated. You're playing an E note over an E, playing a G note or an A note over an A, but making it more rock and roll by bending up to those notes. But when he comes out of that, this is a cool little E minor pentatonic scale, 5th, 4th, 3rd strings, hammer-ons, from 12 to 14 on the 5th and 4th strings. He's just going back between the E note and the G note. 3rd string, 12, 14, 16, might be bending. And then 15th fret, 2nd string, bending up. That note, resolving to the E. Something like that, anyway. Pretty standard rock and roll pentatonic solo with some bending. He's just playing it with some really gnarly, high-pitched, and a lot of gain, probably, I would imagine, the bridge pickup of the Casino. So that's an extremely rough version of Your Blues, and it's appropriately rough because, again, after all, this is a ragged, rough, gnarly, angry, angsty tune that should just be played very free form, loud, raucously, so you can just, you know, exercise all your demons through it, because that's what Lennon was doing after all with this tune. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.